Welcome to my first Substack Live. And the reason that I decided to do this today was because yesterday I shared a new post about the Four Corners investigative report from Australia talking about uh, child care. And this was, to me, a bombshell report. I think this is really eye opening. And so I decided to write a Substack blog to kind of break down the report because it is an hour-long show of reporting on this particular topic. And I found it to be really triggering in a lot of spots. Like it was really, they shared like comments from offenders that like conversations that offenders were having on the dark web within like pedophilic forums, sharing how they talk to each other about how to enter childcare centers, how to gain the trust of the people that they work with, how to interview for a position in a childcare center, what kind of answers to give. Just really like it was really disturbing. And there was a lot of detail too that they shared. Like they were saying in the report, like we can't share everything, but they shared a lot, like enough. Hold on, I'm just gonna fix my chair here. Okay. So anyway, I decided to write this blog post on Substack because, of course, this is a school community and daycares fall within that, right? So I decided to write about sort of recapping what this investigative report was about. And of course, more importantly for me, like what can parents doing to prevent, this kind of abuse from happening, from at the very least reducing the risk. And especially for those parents who are just starting to consider daycare or who have had their child in daycare, wherever you are in that spectrum, I hope that the blog post helps you. Um, First of all, to have the awareness that this is prevalent, that it can happen, that it is happening, particularly in Australia. But this is an issue that happens across the globe. Like, this isn't just something that's happening in Australia. So I just want to make sure people are aware of that. So having that awareness, and then of course knowing what are the things that I can be doing to reduce the risk. And then of course to have something that you can share with others. So if you know other parents whose kids are in daycare, that you can share this information with them to help raise awareness for other parents as well. So I wanted to do this live also so that because I received a lot of questions. I received the blog that I shared had some surface information, mostly because I was sharing it from sources like the Moore Center. And if you're not familiar with the Moore Center, they're a organization, a research organization based in Washington, D.C. They operate under the Johns Hopkins University, and their focus is on the prevention of child sexual abuse. And they just came out last year with a guide that youth serving organizations like daycares can use to improve their policies to reduce risk and better protect children. So that was one guide that I used and referenced. It's, of course, part of a larger scope of resources that I pull from to provide you guys information on what you can do. And also Presidium. Presidium is actually a insurance organization that actually has this division that helps youth serving organizations understand why it's so important that they put policies in place from a liability perspective. And I think that's a really powerful way to approach schools and daycares in terms of incentivizing them, motivating them. If you're, not coming at this from a moral perspective of like, yeah, we should be protecting kids just as a moral and ethical standard. But if you need more incentivizing reasons, then think of the liability, right? Because if abuse happens under your watch because you didn't have the right policies in place, then you now have another reason to consider, because like insurance companies are actually at a point where they don't want to insure organizations that aren't doing the work because it's costing them so much. Like the what they're paying out in lawsuits is crazy pants. So if you ever talk to a school or youth serving organization that kind of just dismisses this, that's another avenue. So consider that. That is one of the reasons why I pulled also information from Presidium and their reports that they do yearly, where they actually study the organizations that do their trainings. So Presidium offers trainings on how to ensure that you have good safety policies within your organization, um, so that you're reducing the likelihood that abuse will happen under your roof. And anyway, so these are the two sources that I pulled from. But I know parents have lots of questions and they want to know more information about like what can they do, what's the nitty gritty, right? And so I wanted to do this live to answer those questions. So if you're here live, feel free to post questions here. I'm assuming it's similar to Instagram where you can write questions and post that. So if you do have questions here while you're live, please let me know. But I want to answer some that were already submitted to me ahead of time. So I'm going to answer those first. Okay. So the first one was like, what can I do to prepare my child? What can I do to make sure that my child can tell me if something happened, right? And this is particularly hard when your child is really young, maybe particularly if they're pre-verbal. Like, so this is one of the things I always say is when your child is really young, when they're pre-verbal, they're just starting to learn about body safety, we really can't expect much from them. We can hope that they tell us. We can certainly educate them and start on the path of teaching them about, your body belongs to you, autonomy, boundaries, consent, like people should ask for permission. These are basics that don't even have anything to do really with sexual abuse, but more around them recognizing their rights, recognizing that they have a right to their boundaries, understanding what boundaries even are so that they understand how to like engage with other kids, right? Like even just the basics of simple things like, playground etiquette, right? Like making sure that you're not pushing or grabbing or taking something that doesn't belong to you. So those are some of the basics that we should be teaching as young as 2 is when you can start with these conversations. But to then jump to private parts, safety, and abuse prevention education is a whole other thing. And that takes time for kids to learn. You can certainly read books with them. You can talk about it. You can help them understand. You want to start teaching things like body literacy, right? Naming body parts so that a child can at the very least identify where they've been touched and accurately use the language that can help clarify and confirm if a child has been touched inappropriately in private parts of their body, right? Like their genitalia. So those are fundamental pieces that we want to start teaching, but I want to remind you, we cannot expect a lot from kids at that young age between 2 and 4. To be able to communicate clearly at all times. And unfortunately, and even in this report, they talk about that. Like offenders know that really young kids are not considered reliable witnesses in court because a lot of times they're not educated, a lot of times they don't have the language or they're pre-verbal and they can't really express what happened to them or how they're being touched or if something unsafe or something feels wrong or off, right? Like typically that is something that a child with a little bit more developed language can do, maybe between 3 and 4. 2 and 3 is kind of early, but kids can still tell you if something's wrong, right? And there's even lots of ways for nonverbal kids to be able to communicate using sign language, using body language. Parents can use um, you know uh, for example, posters that have the body and like have the child point to something, so there's different ways that can happen. I'm not saying that just because a child is young or just because they're nonverbal, they can't communicate, right? So they certainly can, but it just adds a layer of complexity to it. Now, in terms of what can we do to prepare our children, like for sure we can start to educate them about those things so that they're aware, they're recognizing what is safe, what is not safe. And then ideally that they can tell you, they can report to you. And once a child gets a little bit older, like let's say 4 and up, you can start to teach them about the concept of secret safety, not to keep a secret. If somebody tells them not to tell, that's not okay, that you need them to tell you if something doesn't feel okay, helping them understand their body cues. I actually just posted a video about that a couple of days ago, helping kids understand, what unsafe feelings feel like. If they feel nervous or scared or anxious, what those signals feel like in their body. So whether that's like their hair standing up on the back of their head or wobbly legs, their heartbeat races, their hands get sweaty, their stomach feels, off, like they need to go to the bathroom. Like there's so many body signals, right? So helping kids understand that, connect to their bodies, connect to that is really important and helpful. The other thing too is that we need to, as parents, talk to the caregivers about these topics. And to me, at a young age, particularly for daycare, that's even more important than teaching your kids right away. To me, you have to be the advocate for your child and have these hard conversations with the caregivers in your child's life so that two things happen. One is you can find out who's an ally, right? You can, if if like let's say the daycare provider is not aware of body safety education or they don't have enough information about it, they may be curious to learn more, they may want more information from you. That's a good sign. If they're dismissive of it or if they are gaslighting you that that's not something that you need to worry about, it's not important, or they've never had issues like that in their center, that's potentially a yellow red flag that this might not be a safe place because they're not paying attention to, ensuring that they have safe policies and that they're practicing safe policies and that they are safeguarding. So that's information that you can only learn by talking about this topic and having that conversation. So it gives you information about that person, about the center, and then you in turn are also giving them information to say, we take this seriously. This is something that matters to us. This is a priority for us, and we want to make sure that our child is safe in your space and under your care. So you're also communicating to them. Now, if the second part of that to me, which is also really important, is that if you have this conversation where you're also signaling to someone who could be a potential offender, if you are talking to someone who's an offender and you don't know it because they're trying to groom you or groom your child, they've been put on notice that you are an educated parent, you're a vigilant parent, you're an aware parent, and you're educating your child. So that makes you a much less attractive target, because I want to remind you that offenders groom adults first before they groom kids. They're wanting you to let your guard down, to be more permissive, to be so sort of enamored by this person that you wouldn't believe that they could do something like that. So it makes you put your guard down. But when you have those conversations, essentially what you're saying is, I'm on alert and I'm paying attention, and that is not the kind of target that an offender wants to go after. They want to go after someone who is naive, ignorant, and does not know anything about this topic and would not assume that that person could be an offender, right? They would not even consider it, right? And that's exactly who offenders look for as parents. And then, of course, as children, because they know that parent's not educating their child may not be even aware that abuse is happening. May not be aware to even raise a red flag to the parent of what's going on. Excuse me. So that to me is way more important of what you can and should be doing in a daycare space. It's different when you get into school, elementary school. Your child is older, they're going to be interacting with peers in elementary school settings. We're seeing that peer to peer is actually a bigger issue than educator misconduct. Nevertheless, it still is an issue, but not as big as peer to peer. In daycares, peer to peer can also be an issue if the adults in those caregiving roles are not educated about what is age appropriate, what's considered red flag behavior. A lot of people tend to think that all of it is age appropriate curiosity and that there's not much that needs to be done. Sometimes they may not even alert a parent to the fact that inappropriate behavior is happening and should be addressed. So, which is a whole other conversation, which we're not going to get into today. But I think that's really an important piece to be aware of, is that that's another reason to talk to the daycare center and say, like, what kind of training do you guys do for your staff on what is age appropriate? How do they get trained to be able to identify sexually harmful behavior versus abusive behavior versus age appropriate curiosity behavior? What's the protocol for how to, for when caregivers know to talk to parents? Is that something that they make sure to do, et cetera, right? So that's also important conversation there as well. So that was one of the big questions. I kind of answered multiple questions in that I had received ahead in that answer, which is, of course, educate your kids. Super important. Start early. 2 is not too early. They're starting to have self-awareness. This is an age where they are starting to be curious about bodies, and unfortunately, offenders know this and take advantage of that. Um, and then, so educating your kids, one. Number two, and to me, more important, is having conversations with the caregivers. And so, if you want to know what are the questions that I should be asking, how do I have these conversations? If you go to the Substack article that I wrote yesterday, that I published yesterday, you can find a link at the very bottom of the post that has a link to a blog that I also wrote with questions that you can ask. There's also a PDF guide called Prepare to Prevent, which is specifically for parents who are sending their kids to daycare, preschool, elementary school for the first time, on how to prepare your kids in terms of what to teach them. Some of the stuff that I already covered, but it goes a little bit more in detail. So those are the two things that I would say are the most standout pieces of advice that I can give. If you feel like there is red flag behavior that you're seeing, if there's something odd that you're seeing in terms of behavior with the adults who are in caregiving roles in your daycare, or there's some kind of suspicious behavior, or your child is showing some signs, there are other blog articles that I have on my website, consentparenting.com, that you can check out that help you determine, am I seeing things, or is this something that I should be investigating further? If you'd like to book a consultation, you can also find that through consentparenting.com. There is a link for information on how to book a consultation with me. I offer two types. There's a 30-minute sort of QQ. It's a quick question consult. And then there's a 60-minute full either prevention plan consultation or post-event, if something has already happened and you need guidance, type of consultation as well. So I hope that that's helped. And I don't see any live questions. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. And thank you for being here. I hope that's helped. And please share this with other parents, again, who are sending their kids to daycare or are planning on sending them. Obviously, really important too, if you haven't sent your child yet and you're in that phase of figuring out where you want to send your child. Doing your due diligence is so important, making sure that you are interviewing those centers just as much as they would be interviewing a potential employee is really, really important, and not just going by word of mouth or recommendations from other parents. Of course, you can weigh that into your decision making, but don't make it the reason why you decide. Okay. Make sure that you're doing your own due diligence. Okay. Thanks so much for joining. I hope that was helpful. Please share it out to others, and I hope to see you in another live in the future. All right. Take care and be safe. Bye.